to the show. This is the Frankly Fantasy Football Podcast, Fantasy Football for the Average Joe. We are your hosts, Frankie and Johnny. Welcome to Week 14, the final week of the fantasy football regular season. Frankie, my brother.
What's happening, man? I can't believe we're here. 14 weeks, guys. 14 weeks, and we get into the meat and potatoes. If you've listened to us and you made it to the playoffs, gear up. We got an awesome episode.
This is what we've been playing for all year. How you faring out, man? How are things looking for you personally right now?
Looking good, John. Looking really good. So I am for sure in the playoffs in 2 leagues. In my third league, if I win, I'm in. I'm in. And so that would be really, really awesome. But, in the 2 leagues that I'm already in, hey, I'm sitting atop I'm a 1 seed and a 4 seed and looking good, man. What about you?
I am having a year. Johnny's having a year. Yeah, I'm 9-4 in 2 leagues. And he's number 2 seed in both leagues, fighting for high point man in both leagues. So, yeah, man, I'm having a season. I
love it.
Listen, I have walked the walk and talked the talk. Everything that we've talked about on the podcast, I have personally done myself as well. And you know what? It's working out. So thankfully, Frankie, we're right a lot more often than we're wrong.
That's right.
And you know what? I'm taking my own advice. And maybe because I talk to you every week, maybe that makes me better. So I'm going to give you some credit for my success this year in fantasy. Hopefully we have that Frankie and Johnny Super Bowl, though, in our Super Flex League. I want that so bad. That'll be a bonus episode if we're playing each other in the Super Bowl, man. Absolutely. It's going to be a blast. How's everything else shaking out, man? We've got Christmas parties coming up. We've got football on Saturdays now coming up. A lot of crazy shit happening, man. How you feeling about?
John, it's going to be good. These next few weeks are going to be an absolute blast, man. I mean, from the Christmas games, we got Christmas Eve games. We got, flex schedules now on the 17th, a full slate. It's like Thanksgiving all over again. And it's great games, man. These next few weeks are so fun because everybody's in a good mood for the holidays. Everybody's fighting to get into the playoffs. Then when we're all together and we have the playoffs together, we're going to have a blast, John. We have a Christmas party together and it's going to be fucking awesome. It's just going to be a blast.
Well, I do have to say, I called my mother yesterday and told her, hey, there's a problem. Our family Christmas party is on Saturday. The Browns are playing Saturday right in the middle of the party. There's a couple of games on. Every time we all get together, the uncles, cousins, we're all in leagues together, So all we do is talk about fantasy football, and it pisses off all the people in our family so bad. And, I want everybody, this is a PSA. Johnny wants to give you a PSA here. Frankie, you've got a wife and you've got small kids. I know a lot of guys have small kids out there playing fantasy football. Hey, you gotta spend time with your family. This is really difficult. You're fighting. Every day is a battle. You're looking at waivers. You're looking at your defenses for the playoffs. You're fighting to get in. You're watching every game. So I just want everybody to realize this could really, put you by yourself, So I want you to be smart. Know that your loved ones are missing you this time of year.
That's right. John,
enjoy John, this, Frankie, real quick.
What people...
Hey, honey. So, what about leaving the house today?
Yes! I got Antonio Brown. I'm drafting him. This will just be like 4 more hours and I'll be ready to go. 4. Yep.
4 hours.
All by myself, don't wanna be all by myself anymore.
Daddy, look at the picture I just drew.
Oh, honey, I totally want to, but I can't look at anything but the TV screen while Joe Flacco's playing. He's my fantasy quarterback.
We'll play soccer with me, Daddy.
Soccer? Totally. My kicker needs 2 more points, and I'm in the Super Bowl, and the game's it should happen sometime in the next 3 hours. Cool? So I'll see you outside tomorrow or whatever later. Okay, 2 more yards, 2 more yards, 2 more yards, 2 more yards! Yes! I won the fantasy Super Bowl, honey! I won! Honey?
all by myself anymore.
That's great.
Yes, to all of you fantasy football junkies, good luck this season. Good luck in the playoffs, but don't forget your families, okay? Don't be a jerk and hide in the Christmas parties on your phone watching the games. Just be considerate. Frankie, that's totally you in those videos. I can see your kids going, Daddy, do you want to play with me? And you're like,
man.
4 more hours, baby, 4 more hours, and we'll get there.
Well, you learn as you go. So the thing is, you got to get them involved in it. Hey, you ready to put on the jerseys? Casey's in the playoffs. You know, my mother-in-law's in the playoffs. It's
There
all
you go.
about getting them involved.
Yeah, well, a lot of us don't have that luxury. I'm not getting Grandma Laurie or my mother involved in fantasy football, so that's all there is to it. So everyone, please be considered, or you'll be all by yourself, even though you win that trophy by yourself, you know? All right, hey, Frankie, let's talk about a few things today on today's show. We need to get into some tips here. There's a couple of moves, some veteran moves and things you need to look at that, you know, aren't in the rule books here. They don't, teach you how to prepare for the playoffs. Let's get into a few tips here, man.
Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Just the tips?
Just the tips. All right, Frankie, one of the tips that we've got here is called play keep away. Can you explain to everybody what that looks like and what the strategy is with that?
Definitely, guys. So for those of you, especially in big leagues, everything's thin on the waiver wire. And so what you need to understand is there might be some top tier teams in the playoffs right now for fantasy, in your fantasy playoffs, that might have injuries. If that's the case, maybe they had Lamar Jackson, maybe they had Jimmy Garoppolo, maybe they had the Seattle Seahawks backfield, for instance. John, we'll talk about here in a little bit. But guys, pick up those backups. Pick up even the guys that are on the waivers that maybe aren't a backup. For instance, if you have Lamar, maybe there's a Derek Carr, maybe there's a Mac Jones, maybe there's other guys that the team that has Lamar Jackson might look to pick up. So what we're saying is, if that team is a top tier team in the playoffs, guys, do not worry about some of the scrubs on your bench. You want to play keep away. And it's almost like a defense mechanism, because if you end up having to play these guys, now they're going to have to play worse players than what it would be as if they were able to pick up some of those second, third tier quarterbacks, running backs, receivers on the waivers. So what we're getting at is understand the dynamic in the playoffs, who is going to the playoffs, and then adjust accordingly. You want to kind of screw the other guys, right? It's kind of like Dick the Dealer is the best way to put it in euchre, right? You want to try to screw over that person a little bit. That way they have a lesser ability, John, and for those listening, to come back and maybe put together a formidable team that can go against yours. So play keep away. It is a very, very good strategy heading into the playoffs.
Absolutely right. All right, the next tip we've got here, I love my notes. It's so funny. It just says, fuck depth, plan for matchups. What are we talking about, man?
It's great. So guys, what we're talking about here is you don't need the level of depth of what you think. You have your starting lineup. You're going to ride and die at this point in time with your starting lineup. A lot of those tier 4, tier 5 guys, that aren't ever going to see the field. We're talking about the backup running back in Chicago. We're talking about that level of player. Fuck it. Get rid of them. Start stacking your team with players that might have a really nice playoff schedule. John and I hit on it, guys, last week with some of the running backs and receivers. This week, we're going to touch on some of the quarterbacks and defenses. So guys, pick up those types of players. Don't worry about the super intense depth. Like, you do need a little bit, right? You do need maybe the backup, or maybe you want the handcuff to Dalvin Cook and Alexander Madison. Cool. Keep those guys. What we're talking about is that super, super deep level player that honestly, it just doesn't make sense, right? To have them on your roster. Bolster your roster with top matchups going into the playoffs. Maybe it's a couple defenses, a couple quarterbacks, like whatever it is. Again, it kind of ties into play keep away a bit, but what it also does is it eliminates the fluff on your team. Don't worry about the fluff. Focus on the matchup.
That's right. Put players on your bench that you're going to use.
Yeah.
or that you're keeping away from other players, or that you're planning. I mean, you got to look at week 14, 15, 16 right now. You could plan for your Super Bowl, that's fine, but you may not have the bench space depending on how deep it is. Plan for week 15 and 16 now. You don't need 4 running backs on your team if you're only starting 2. You want to put a lottery ticket backup running backs on there in case there's injuries. That's a great idea. But have your quarterback streaming plans ready. Have your defenses ready for those couple of weeks and load your bench up on those things. All right, Frankie, the last tip here says burn your fab money, pick up streamers and defenses. What are we talking about?
Guys, this is so critical. So many times throughout the season, you have a stash. So for a lot of our leagues, we have $100 of fab, right? Fake money is what it is that you use for a bidding system to pick up players on the waiver. It's not a reverse waiver order or anything like that. In our opinion, it's kind of bullshit. That's kind of weak a little bit. If you do have that, that's fine. But if you have the fab picks, guys, now is the time to burn through those. You don't get to roll it over the next year. You will lose it if you're not using it. So for those of you who have maybe stacked up for the last year for this fantasy season, maybe you're sitting on $70 fab. Maybe you're sitting on $50. Burn it. Use it. Grab defenses. Grab top streamers. Grab backup quarterbacks. What we're seeing is there's a lot of players banged up. Okay. And again, it goes back to, hey, fuck the depth is what we're talking about. Don't burn your fab on those, third, fourth, fifth string guys. Burn the fab on those defenses that have really sexy matchups. Burn a couple, burn some fab on maybe some quarterbacks. Because what we're seeing is there's guys banged up right now. Again, we mentioned the Jimmy Garoppolos, the Lamar Jacksons. Guys, there's more than that. We're seeing Matt Stafford down. We're seeing a few others that are continuously banged up. We're seeing Baker Mayfield getting cut, right? All of these different things that are happening are causing trickle-down effects within fantasy. And so burn this fab dollar. You can't keep it. You must use it and pick up some of those really interesting guys that you can put on your bench and utilize in that of week 15 and 16, especially to propel you to get to that week 17 Super Bowl.
That's right. There's nothing worse than having $50 of fab dollars and you lose in the first week of the playoffs. Use it now. Don't save it up. Burn it, baby. Let's get some news.
The season 2000 yards. Just doesn't expect. Absolutely lost. Flip out.
News and notes.
All right, heading into week 14, we've got some injuries. It's been absolutely brutal, man. All right, let's start right off at the top here. Lamar Jackson, quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens, left the game with a knee injury. He already had a quad thing going on prior to this game and was questionable. Now he's got a knee injury. Word coming out, Coach Harbaugh is saying it's day to day or week to week. Now, week to week to me means, and he's likely not to play this week. They're just not calling him out yet. He's definitely not going to play this week. And day to day anymore in the NFL means week to week. It's possible you don't have Lamar Jackson for your fantasy playoffs. This is one that I know everybody's been looking at his schedule. It looks beautiful for the playoffs. You've got to make some moves. And you've got Tyler Huntley as the backup. You've got to make a move for him, or you got to look at some of the waiver options Frankie's going to give you here. We're going to talk about some QB schedules that are juicy for the playoffs as well. But yes, you're going to have to plan to not have Lamar Jackson for the foreseeable future. Another one out for the season, Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Gorgeous. God, he even looked gorgeous going out on the cart. I mean, he's just such a handsome man. Yeah. He's out for the season. He's gone, guys. He broke his foot. Brock Purdy is going to be starting for the 49ers. Frankie, let's talk about this for a second now. There's a lot of rumors going around. Let me get into, you buried the lead for me on the next piece of news. Baker Mayfield cut by the Panthers. Not really fantasy relevant. He was pretty terrible for the Panthers. He's now their third string quarterback. Let's get back to San Francisco, though, because there's rumors of, Baker Mayfield has cleared waivers. Is he going to go to San Francisco? Is Brock Purdy able to take them? They've got a Super Bowl winning defense right now, and they've got absolute generational stars on offense with Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel and George Kittle. Ayuk has really come out. What are the impacts here? What are we looking at fantasy-wise with this team now?
This is big. because Brock Purdy, guys, for those of you who don't know, he's the rookie from the 7th round, picked on the very last pick of the NFL draft, and he came from Iowa State. Okay, so are we looking at a Tom Brady type of Cinderella story? Well, the data shows probably not. Okay, not saying that he couldn't be, but it's stacked against him. He did look good though. So here's the thing, John. There's a couple rumors swirling around. Baker Mayfield is definitely one to San Francisco. The reason why this makes sense is because Kyle Shanahan's offense is notorious for being extremely quarterback friendly. With all the motioning that they do, it takes away, the quarterback having to really be that director on the field. It's really made up by the team dynamic. And so for quarterbacks coming in, it's very, very easy for them to pick up that offense. So Baker might make sense. Now the other thing that's interesting is Matt Ryan. I say that because we've already seen the Colts move away from Matt Ryan. We've already seen them wanting to test out Sam Ehlinger. Now, Matt Ryan came back into the fold strictly because Frank Wright got fired, right? They bring in Jeff Saturday. Jeff Saturday says, absolutely not. Matt Ryan's the guy. Here's the thing. The Colts are mathematically now eliminated from the playoffs. So it doesn't matter. Okay, this year is chalked up to a loss for the Colts fans. What if Matt Ryan goes to the Colts and asks for a cut, a release, because it's just not working out? It's just not working out. Matt Ryan looks like dog shit in that offense. He would go back to a Kyle Shanahan offense, which, by the way, guys, he was the quarterback when Kyle Shanahan was the OC at Atlanta when he won the MVP and had the stretch of his best QB play. So that could be interesting. So there's a few different things going on. There's a bunch of different rumors. Everything is speculation at this point. Here's what I do know. John, if they end up sticking with Brock Purdy, I see CMC's value skyrocketing. And I say that strictly because of the check down play, what we saw already with Brock Purdy. He came in through 2 touchdowns, looked good, over 200 yards. Now, when you start playing more difficult teams, it's going to be tough, right? And so the question that the 49ers need to look at is Brock Purdy going to be the Joe Flacco of 2011 to where they can rely on that defense and make a run? Is that the guy? Are you willing to put it on this defense solely? If that's the case, you run with Brock Purdy. If not, you make a play. You make a play to get one of these other guys for a quarterback competition, for backup, for maybe even the starting role. So this is a really interesting thing going on here in the 49ers, Sean, because very rarely do we see truly a defense of this magnitude and the offensive weapons that they have. They're literally a Jimmy G away from being a top 3 team in the NFC. So it's going to be very interesting, man. We're going to have to stay close to this one. I think they'll probably rock with Brock Purdy for the time being. However, don't be surprised if they do end up signing Baker Mayfield or something crazier happens, maybe like a Matt Ryan.
I'd be surprised if they brought Baker in. I mean, everything right now that Kyle Shanahan is saying is that, his exact quote was, "I'm a big fan, but we're happy with what we have right now." Mm-hmm. I don't see them bringing in somebody trying to learn a new system this late in the season. I think they're going to see what they've got with Brock Purdy. So for fantasy purposes, at least for the next 2-3 weeks, I don't think there's going to be another quarterback other than Purdy playing right now. So what that means, Christian McCaffrey, I think you're 100% right. He gets a huge boost. They're going to lean on him a lot now.
Yeah.
He's going to be leaned on in the passing game and in the rushing game. I think they could bring up another rusher as well. I think they're going to run the ball a lot more than they have in the past. I think it could help Deebo Samuel. I think you're going to see him running the ball a lot more as well. Yeah. You've got some trick play guys here with McCaffrey and with Deebo Samuel. Now, what I do think it is going to happen, I think it's going to hurt 2 players. I think it's going to hurt George Kittle. Mm-hmm. George Kittle is an excellent blocker, and I think that's what he's going to be doing. I think they're going to try to give Purdy as much protection as absolutely possible. Instead of having McCaffrey in the backfield picking up blitzes, they're going to have Kittle on the line blocking. So I think it really does hurt Kittle. I also think it hurts Ayuk. He was having kind of a breakout season, but that's because he had a pocket passer. I don't see the volume and the quarterback play being there to be able to support Brandon Ayuk. So, I mean, you're going to have to temper your expectations with him. All right, let's move on here. A couple of other injuries. Tua Tagovailoa left the game with an ankle injury. It's not serious. He is expected to play, but be aware of that. Absolutely. This one hurt me, man, big time. This is not the time to lose a guy who you thought could win you your leagues this year. Kenneth Walker III, KW3, left the game with an ankle injury. There's kind of, the reports on this are really kind of all over the place. I've seen some that said it's not that serious. Those are the ones I'm personally hoping for. But then there's others out there that are saying it could be multiple weeks. Now, this is very strange because DJ Dallas, the backup, also was out with an ankle injury. Travis Homer, the other third string running back, was out this past week. The only healthy running back right now on this depth chart is Tony Jones Jr. What are we thinking? This is something we're going to talk about with waiver and all of that. But Frankie, what are we doing with this backfield right now? Are you just picking up a couple of these guys who might be available, hoping somebody comes out to play?
Definitely.
What are we doing here?
Definitely. That's exactly what I'm thinking, John. And especially for those, when we're saying burn fab dollars, this is a situation where you would look to burn fab dollars. And the reason being is because maybe you want to pick up DJ Dallas. And the reason being is even though he's out, maybe come 2 weeks from now, if God forbid something does happen to KW3, he is the immediate backup. Maybe you want to pick up Homer if that's what you're leaning. Maybe he has the ability, if you think DJ Dallas is going to be out a little bit longer than what it could be, then pick up Homer. He's a pass catching specialist. He's dynamic when he's in the open field. But John, I'm definitely looking to pick up Tony Jones Jr. And you can get him for cheap. Guys, we're not sure how this backfield is going to shake out. They might end up bringing up somebody, and John, we'll talk about it a little bit. Maybe there's a move for Phillip Lindsay. Maybe there's a couple guys in the free agent bucket here that have been on practice squads throughout the year. Maybe Devontae Freeman, if he's ready to rock and roll. Like, there's other avenues. And the reason why this is interesting is because the Seattle Seahawks are a playoff team right now. They are in the thick of the playoffs. And so this isn't like a frou-frou, hey, screw it, we're going to find somebody to slop in there. No, they need somebody to continue what Geno Smith and this offense has been doing. And it's been phenomenal watching Seattle's offense. And so this is one, guys, going back to it. You would definitely want to spend some fab, go after Tony Jones Jr., see what happens, keep a really close pulse on DJ Dallas as well as that of Travis Homer. And don't be surprised if something crazy happens from the free agency perspective. Guys claimed off waivers, guys signed off practice squads, but something is going to happen for this backfield.
And with this backfield, just looking at the schedules here, I mean, let's put this in a practical application. You're really looking forward for this week. Week 14, If you've got bye weeks, we're going to talk about the byes. There's 6 teams on bye in the last week of the goddamn fantasy season. This is the week you want. They're playing Carolina at home. They are going to run the ball. So whoever that is who's starting in that backfield, you're going to want on your team for this week, especially to cover for those byes. They do, however, have a pretty rough schedule during the playoffs. San Francisco, at Kansas City, and the Jets. So difficult schedule for a running back these last 3 weeks. But week 14 is where you want to look at the Seattle Seahawks backfield. All right, let's move on here. Hayden Hurst, tight end for the Cincinnati Bengals, left the game with a calf injury. Treylon Burks left the game with, he's in the concussion protocol right now. His status is up in the air. If he gets cleared, he's a smash play this week. But pay attention to that because the concussion protocol changed mid-year this year. It is a little longer. We don't know how serious this was, so pay attention to his status. Cortland Sutton left the game with a hamstring injury. He's just been an absolute bust this year with Russell Wilson. And I mean, the goddamn Denver Broncos offense is awful. Cortland Sutton will probably be out in this week and probably the rest of your fantasy season. I can't see you suiting him up after a hamstring injury on that offense. All right, Frankie, let's get to Frankie and Johnny's Song of Ice and Fire. Okay, man, this was a tough week to have these players on ice because I know you're battling for the playoffs. You're fighting hard, and you got guys that just suck on your team this week. I had a few of these guys, not going to lie. Like this first guy, he's been on ice 2 weeks in a row. They've been tough schedules, but still, this guy used to be matchup proof with his passing work, and he's just not anymore with this offense. Alvin Kamara, running back for the New Orleans Saints, 12 rushes for 26 yards, 2 catches for 11 yards, only 4 goddamn points, man. All right, Frankie, who's next? Let's ride.
Let's ride. John, we're talking about Russell Wilson. This guy, like, we're talking about bust. Is he not maybe the biggest bust of the year? I mean, Seriously.
First of all, I debated even putting him on the ice segment because you shouldn't be starting Russell Wilson. He shouldn't have been started the last 5 weeks. I mean, he's just a guy that should be on your waiver wire, not even a streamer. I mean, there's not a matchup
close.
I can even see that I would start Russell Wilson.
It's crazy, guys. Listen to this. He had a decent completion percentage. He was 17 for 22, only 189 yards, and that's it. He ran the ball for 21 yards twice. Guys, he was sacked twice. What does this equate to? 7 points. Russell Wilson has literally took a ride all the way down into the shitbag stain of the wall. I mean, frozen solid. I've never seen a fall from grace like he had after signing a contract of this magnitude. It is absurd. Russell Wilson, you are frozen solid.
He is the night king, man. He's been up there. I think he's been on ice almost every single week. All right, this guy, let's talk about a receiver here. MPJ, Michael Pittman Jr. This team struggled, man, for the Colts. 2 catches, 16 yards, 2 points. It's difficult to start him. If you're in a deeper league, you have to play him. I mean, he's the number 1 receiver on a team, but that's usually in a negative game script. But it's been really brutal to start him this week. Actually, Paris Campbell has been better than Michael Pittman Jr. like 3 weeks in a row. It's brutal. All right, Frankie, talk about this stack here that doesn't make us feel great.
It doesn't make us feel great. We're talking about Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper, guys. Deshaun Watson, now, he was definitely rough, okay? Definitely rough. He was 12 for 22, only 131 yards. He had an interception, and then he ran the ball 7 times for 21 yards, also was sacked. Guys, 5 total points. Then you look at Amari Cooper, and he had 4 receptions on 9 targets for 40 yards, which is 6 points. Here's the interesting thing. If anybody thought Deshaun Watson was going to come in and absolutely sling it, you were wrong. And it's when you have to wait to play for 2 years, okay, and you think you're going to come back even against the Houston Texans, it's still a very fast play of a rate of play. And the game is fast. And that's what people don't understand. So the good news is, John, is I only see this improving. And I'm not saying that from a Browns fan. I'm saying this from a fantasy football perspective. I only see Deshaun Watson with the play schedule that they or the schedule that they have getting better. And when you see Amari Cooper with 9 targets in his first game with Deshaun Watson, that's a good sign. That's a good sign. So yes, both of them stunk. Yes, both of them did not play to the potential, but this is a bit different than that of like a Russell Wilson, in my personal opinion. I see more of the light with Deshaun for the rest of the year than I do with Russell Wilson, which is kind of crazy to even say. So yes, with that being said, you both sucked. You were on ice and you didn't get the job done.
It hurt, man. It hurt. They won the game though, so that's good. And we'll talk about why in the next segment here. All right, Travis Etienne, running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars, 13 rushes for 54 yards, 3 catches, 12 yards, and he fumbled. 5 points out of Travis Etienne. He hasn't been helping you out these past few weeks either. All right, Frankie, let's get to a couple of Chiefs. Chiefs here.
Kind of crazy, man. We don't often see this guy on ice very often at all. And I'm talking about Travis Kelce.
He's been dominant, man.
Dominant. I mean, crazy, guys. I mean, last week he was the number 8 overall scorer in fantasy football. Guys, this week, not so hot. He only had 6 targets. He had caught 4 of those for 56 yards and fumbled, which equates to 4 points out of Travis Kelce, which is, I mean, it's more than likely to snow in Miami than Travis Kelce to do this again, okay? And then the flip side of this, John, is Juju Smith-Schuster. Again, we talk about there's going to be somebody that pops off. Russian roulette, pick the guy. This week, it was not Juju. Juju had 4 targets, 3 receptions, 35 yards receiving, 5 points. Nothing sexy, out the door, and kind of a dream matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals. So it'll be interesting to see what happens down the stretch here with those guys. But unfortunately, this week, if you had them, man, were you frozen solid.
Oh, yeah. And these last 2 guys here, or these next 2 guys, both running backs for the Miami Dolphins. They were at San Francisco. We knew this was going to happen. In fact, I think Jeff Wilson might have been your quit it last week. We'll talk about that. It is the best defense in the league, though. Raheem Mostert was 7 for 30. He had 3 points. Jeff Wilson, 1 rush, 3 yards. Less than a point for Jeff Wilson. Just crazy.
Rough.
Yeah. Those guys killed you. Then you had another Dolphin here that was on ice. Now, he did get hurt. He did come back into the game, but he played a lot of the game here. He had 1 catch for 9 yards. Jalen Waddle absolutely killed you this week. 1 point out of Jalen Waddle. Who else we got, Frank?
So, John, I'm going to lump in 2 running backs here. We had Gus Edwards on ice. He only had 6 rushes for 12 yards, which equates to 1 point. And then here's another strange one, John. Derrick Henry, King Henry the 10th, for 11 rushes for only 30 yards. Guys, he only ran the ball 11 times. Guys, he also had 2 receptions on 3 targets for 8 yards. Derrick Henry with 4 points in half
Killed
PPR.
You. Absolutely killed you. Yeah. All right, and rounding off the ice segment here is George Kittle. I think we saw some of what I was talking about earlier with Purdy coming in. It wasn't too Purdy for George Kittle here. 2 catches, 22 yards, 3 points for George Kittle. That one hurts too, man. Now, listen, I feel like when you have these guys on ice, Frankie, you know, you're the coach of this team. This is kind of the interview I can see you having right here post game.
Hey, coach, is there anything you want to change?
I mean, I don't know what you want me to tell that. Everybody's like, football's a team game. Okay, it's not a team game. Okay, I did my part. All right, I put in a great game plan. I mean, these players, they're horrible. My players are no good. I mean, everyone's like, no excuses. No, I got 22 excuses. 11 on my offense and 11 on my defense. Our offensive coordinator is terrible. He gets half of his plays off of Madden rookie mode. I mean, the guy is no good. In our offensive line, it's like Obama's immigration policy. Let everybody through. Do we have a chance next week? No, we don't. We're 0-8. We're not good at football. I got 3 white receivers. Our red zone defense is like Oprah, like you get a touchdown, you get a touchdown, you get a touchdown. Our quarterback, look at the playbook. We put in plays for Peyton Manning. He plays like Cooper Manning. I mean, the guy's just not good at football. No credit to the other team, okay? The other team is awful. We tried to recruit bigger, better players to come play for us, but they went to good schools. I put in the game plan. These kids can't execute. 3rd down, terrible. I know we need better players. I get it. We can't win with the product we got in the field here. Like, I'm down to Rick Pitino some guys if I need to, but not at this level. I'm not going to jail for these kids. I mean, they're all talking in the locker room like, we're a team, we're in this together, no matter what happens, we're together. Like, not me, dude. I'm out of here. This team's terrible.
I found that gem and just thought it was great. Hopefully there's not any copyright issues and that can actually play on our YouTube. So funny, man. Yeah. Hey, I did my part. I know I got 22 excuses, okay? 11 on offense, 11 on defense.
It's so good.
So good. All right, man, let's get to fire. Let's kick off some fire here. Who is flaming? You know what? I'm taking this one because this stack once again came through for me, baby. All season long, they have me dominating and fighting for the number 1 high point man in our league. Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, the Eagles stack from heaven. It's absolutely beautiful. Jalen Hurts with 39 points, by the way. Let's see here. 380 yards passing, 3 passing touchdowns, 5 rushes, 12 yards, and a rushing touchdown. Thank you, Jalen Hurts. And let's get to A.J. Brown as well. 30 points out of A.J. Brown. 8 catches, 119 yards, and 2 tutties. Love me some A.J. Brown. He's in my boy band, man. All right. Who else we got on fire here, brother?
John, real quick, for your boy band, I actually had a request from somebody, which never comes in. So people are definitely listening. They love your boy band. We know who's in it. It's A.J. Brown. We got the bassist in A.J. Brown. We got the lead singer, DK Metcalf, the lead guitarist being JJ. We did have a request to add somebody to your boy band.
I love it. I'm all for it. Who do we
David
have?
Njoku.
Oh my God.
David Njoku. And shout out to Holly Kelsey. She immediately reached out and goes, hey, if you've seen him without his shirt on, you need to add him to your boy band. And so, you know what, John? I just wanted to make sure I called that out.
I have seen David Njoku, the Chief, we call him in Cleveland. That's right. He's a tight end for the Cleveland Browns. And man, I'm telling you, he is a physical specimen. He's beautiful.
He's jacked.
You put him right there. You know what? I need to find, please, somebody that has better skills than me. One of our listeners, please, put together a graphic for me of Johnny's boy band. And I want a picture of all of those guys with their shirts off all together. And even like a picture of me in the middle doing this. There's Come on, that's I throw out a challenge
Come
to the
on.
listeners, to the
Somebody's
Frankly
gotta
Fantasy
do it.
Football listeners. Let's go.
That's
Somebody
great.
with some skill, do it.
That's great.
I
So,
love
John,
it, man.
let's go. On fire, man. Devontae Adams.
There he
Wow, is he coming back the last
Yeah.
few weeks, just turning the Jets on. Guys, 12 targets, 8 receptions, 177 yards receiving, and 2 touchdowns. What does that equate to? 36 fantasy points in half PPR. Unbelievable. He's the number 2 receiver in fantasy right now and continues to dominate. Well done, Devontae Adams. You are scorching hot.
Okay, how about this, Frankie? This is something you never see, man. This is rare. First of all, it's rare to see a defense in the top 10 of fantasy scorers. The number 3 fantasy player this week is the Cleveland Browns defense. Can you believe that shit?
That's awesome.
Come on, man. What do we have here? 12 points allowed, 2 picks. Let's see here. A fumble recovery, a kickoff or a punt return for a touchdown, a defensive touch. It was absolutely bananas. These guys went crazy and destroyed the Houston Texans, man. All right, who else we got here?
We're going to the jungle here with Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow continues to light the world on fire. He's got his guy back with Jamar Chase, and boy, did they dethrone the Kansas City Chiefs this past week. Joe Burrow completed 25 of 31 for 286 yards, 2 touchdowns, while also adding 46 yards rushing on 11 carries and another touchdown. What does that equate to, guys? 33 points for Joey B. Well done, sir. You continue to carry your team.
Joe Burrow has been on fire. He's playing some damn good football right now, man. All right, the sun god. I pray to thee, Amon-Ra. Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver for the Detroit Lions, man. This guy's been kicking ass. He's been awesome. 11 catches, 114 yards, 2 touchdowns, 30 points out of the sun god. Who else we got, man?
John, we got Tyreek Hill, who continues to just perform, man. I mean, he's the
Cheetah.
number 3 receiver, Cheetah, and he's torching people. Guys, he had 9 receptions for 146 yards and 1 touchdown on 14 targets. He is a target monster. Tua continues to look his way, and he continues to dominate. Tyreek Hill with 27 points this week.
And we got Geno
Wow.
Smith, man, still just playing freaking fantastic. 367 pass yards, 3 passing touchdowns with a pick. I mean, the guy's just been playing great. 26 points out of Geno Smith. What a fucking gem to find him in fantasy this year.
John, fun fact on Geno Smith. Right now, guys, he's the 7th quarterback in fantasy football, the number 7th quarterback, and he is 15th overall in fantasy scoring right now. That's
Wow.
absurd. Geno Smith, hats off to you, man. Comeback player of the year. Lock it up. He's that guy.
Absolutely. Who else is on here, Frankie?
John, I'm going to lump in the last 2 here. So we got 2 Christians coming at you. And I'm not talking religious. I'm talking Christian Watson here with 25 points, went absolutely nuclear again. John, there's something special going on with this kid. We called it from the beginning. I remember putting my stamp on Christian Watson coming out of that NFL draft. He was the guy with Aaron Rodgers, and he continues to perform these last few weeks, guys. He had 6 targets, which he turned into 3 catches for 48 yards, including a 14-yard touchdown run. The other Christian, we're
Real
going
quick.
with
Let's stay with this Christian real quick. I just, what reminds me, do you remember during draft season, your friend was in a keeper league?
Yes.
And needed to draft. She had,
she's the 4th overall pick.
4th overall pick. And we told her, this is a rookie only draft. It's a keeper league or a dynasty league. We said, and Frankie and I both agree, we were pouring over the list of the rookies and everyone. We said to draft Christian Watson. Everybody in the league laughed at her when she drafted him. And she said, everybody laughed at me. Are you guys sure? And we said, absolutely. Give it some time. But this is a guy who can win you your leagues. This guy's had 8 touchdowns in the last 4 goddamn weeks. Man.
Insane. John, fun fact, he has more touchdowns than Justin Jefferson.
Wow.
Think about that. When you put that into perspective, it's fucking crazy what this kid is doing.
You know, I haven't seen Christian Watson with his shirt off. Maybe I should Google that. You know,
maybe you need a cello player.
He might be. He might be joining my boy band here, man. You know. All right, go to the other Christian. What do we got?
All right, we're going to the other Christian here, guys. And who am I talking about? I'm talking about the number 3 running back in all fantasy football, and Christian McCaffrey coming up big again. 17 rushes, 66 yards. And here's what he does to make him beautiful at football for fantasy. He had 10 targets, 8 receptions, 80 yards receiving, and a touchdown. What does that equate to? 25 fantasy points for White Christian.
All right, that is our ice and fire segment. All right, now let's get to the meat and potatoes here. This is what everybody's been waiting for. Let's start looking at week 14, the final week of the regular season in fantasy football. Thank you to the NFL for giving us bye weeks in week 14. How about 6 of them? It's like, here you go. Good luck, fuckers.
Rough.
Jesus. All right, so this week on bye, we've got the Falcons, we've got the Bears, we've got the Packers, we've got the Colts, the Saints, and the Commanders. So there's guys missing this week, and that's really, really painful. Frankie, why don't you get us to the waiver wire? Not a big week for the waiver wire, but maybe look at some options for us for, getting ahead of these injuries we've had with quarterback. Maybe something that came out of the Seattle backfield. What can we do this week to help us out, man?
Yeah, guys, there's really, it's super thin, right? Everything that we have stated coming from the waiver wire, it's probably picked up. So here's what we need to focus on. We need to focus on injuries. We need to use that fab dollar and burn that dollar for these injuries and get some people that can accommodate. What I mean by that is Seattle backfield. DJ Dallas, Travis Homer, both of them are question marks. CW3 or KW3, Kenneth Walker III. He's still banged up, guys. So who are you going to look for? I'm going for Tony Jones Jr. Very interesting. Could be a guy. Again, you could look at that of DJ Dallas. Again, if we see Kenneth Walker III miss a few weeks and DJ Dallas comes back, he might be a really nice pickup. So that is who I would be focusing on right now in that Seattle backfield. And again, stay close to other guys. What we've seen is Latavius Murray get plucked out and put on the Broncos and becomes fantasy relevant. What we've seen is Philip Lindsay getting brought up when for the Colts, when Jonathan Taylor was hurt and when Deion Jackson was hurt, and he got some serious PT there. This is very similar situation. You got to find gold in a pile of shit. You're not really sure what's going to happen. So for me, I even maybe like one of those super flyers on that of a Philip Lindsay, somebody like that could end up getting plucked and picked out and put on the Seattle team, John. So that's the Seattle backfield, guys. There's 2 other guys I want to hit on. Brock Purdy and Tyler Huntley. Very, very questionable for both. And I say that because they are unknown. We've seen Tyler Huntley. We have a better sample size. His rushing floor makes him a bit sexier than that of some others. But the thing is that it's still Tyler Huntley. You're not going to get that same volume as what Lamar Jackson had. In addition, the weapons around him is much worse than what it's been in prior years when Tyler Huntley was playing. So keep that in mind. But he's absolutely a guy coming into a really nice playoff matchup, or a few playoff matchups in week 15 and 16 that could be relevant. Could get you 17, 18 points potentially. And then Brock Purdy, we've already talked about it. Kid comes in, looks really decent, 200 plus yards, 2 touchdowns. I'm not saying that he's going to be able to keep that. His nickname is Mr. Relevant. Guys, he might continue to be Mr. Relevant, but it's a risky play. However, it's an interesting play because of the check down ability and that of CMC, and with the weapons he has around him and that of Debo, Kittle, and Ayuk. So there is something there. So guys, focus on those injuries that have happened to Jimmy G, Lamar Jackson, Seattle backfield, and start trying to pluck some of these guys, and hopefully you hit gold.
And what I like about Purdy is how the 49ers play offense. They don't throw the ball down the field very often. They throw short passes. They get their guys in space because they've got amazing guys in space with McCaffrey, with Debo Samuel, with Kittle. Get those guys in a quick pass in space. I think that gives Purdy a nice floor. I really, really do. So I wouldn't expect huge things. I mean, that's not a huge passing volume offense anyway. But I think he gives you a nice floor and safe floor anyway. Yeah. All right, who else we got, Frankie? Anybody else on here, man?
I think that's good, John. And I say that because, guys, the waiver's going to be thin across the board. If Zonovan Knight is still on there, after what we've seen from a sample size, you pick his ass up. Yep. If Jordan Mason is still there still might be, the handcuff to CMC. That's of interest as well. Again, when we talked about screw the depth guys and focus on some of these second tier guys, if those individuals that are going to get playing time are still there, pick them up now. If they're not, you have to focus on some of the injuries and accommodating for those people that are stepping in with those injured players being out.
Let's hit it and quit it, baby.
I want you to hit it. Hit it and quit it. I want you to
yeah. All right. Last week's hit it's, Frankie. We did pretty well on our hit it's and quit it's and flex appeals. I mean, we're kind of getting good at this, man. Maybe we should do a podcast. All right, last week, Frankie, you had Chris Godwin versus New Orleans, 10 points, and Keenan Allen versus the Raiders with 18 points. Now, the one I did wrong was Amari Cooper at Houston. I had him 6 points. Now, however, he did have 9 targets, so he could have had a much better game. It's just, unfortunately, they were Deshaun Watson targets who hasn't thrown a ball in 700 days. So, my bad. But Zeke Elliott versus Indy did hit 17 points out of Zeke. I was guaranteeing him a touchdown, Johnny's lock of the week, and sure as shit, it came. All right, Frankie, who is your first hit it this week, man?
So I'm going to go out on a limb. This is super risky, guys, but again, we go out on a limb. Johnny and I have been right way more than we have been wrong. So I'm going all in on this guy. DeAndre Swift versus that of Minnesota. The reason why I love this pick is because we have seen an increase in the trajectory of his playing time. So we have seen him go from 8 carries to 10 carries to now 14 carries for 62 yards and a touchdown, along with 4 receptions for 49 yards. Guys, DeAndre Swift had 19 fantasy points this week. He is finally fully healthy from that from that ankle injury and that shoulder problem that he was having. And so, guys, with this uptick in playing time, with the Lions still in the playoff hunt, fighting their asses off for a playoff, guys, DeAndre Swift is going to need to be relied on both the rushing attack and that of the receiving attack. So for me, this is a dream matchup against Minnesota, whose defense has been significantly poor over the last few weeks. I think the Lions can come in here and really cause some problems from the offensive side. Lock it in. DeAndre Swift, I'm hitting you, baby.
Yeah, you should hit him, man. You called DeAndre Swift and picked him up in your leagues. And I've seen the trends over the past 3 weeks. He's getting more and more. He's obviously getting healthy and feeling good. Yeah, he's looking good. I think he's got a really nice lineup here for the playoffs. Could really help win some people some leagues. All right, my first hit it here. I'm going with Christian Kirk. Let's see how many Christians we can have. This is a Christian episode.
This is a Christian episode.
It's close to Christmas. We might as well get into that, man. Christian Kirk, first of all, he's the wide receiver 11 right now on the season and a half PPR. He's had at least 8 targets in 5 of the last 6 games. I want that. Give me that. It's tasty. He's had 100 yards in 2 of the last 3 games, and he's playing Tennessee. Tennessee's defense has been playing well, but they're very vulnerable in the secondary. And I just think Christian Kirk, he's obviously the man there. He's getting the ball. And I just think Christian Kirk is set up to have a very, very good game. Who's your next hit it, baby?
John, I'm going to go with a guy that definitely is a little bit less risky. And I think he's going to be a top 3 receiver this week. I'm going to go with Amon-Ra St. Brown versus Minnesota. Guys, what we're seeing the sun god continues to ball out at the back half of the year. He's been good all year. He got a little banged up, and now he's hitting his stride. 22 targets in the last 2 games. He had 11 receptions on 12 targets for 114 yards, 2 touchdowns versus the Jags. He was heating up. He was on fire in our fire segment. Guys, I love this matchup. And here's a little plug too. I love him in daily fantasy lineups as well. So if you're interested in doing the DraftKings and things like that, he could be somebody that could really help you this week. So I'm locking in my 2 Lions players, that of DeAndre Swift and that of the sun god and Amon-Ra St. Brown, baby.
Absolutely. Love him. Also, if you need a streamer this week, Jared Goff is a very good option to pick up and play if you lost Lamar or Jimmy Garoppolo. Love Amon-Ra. You know, I have seen him with his shirt off, and I might have to clear a space on my boy band for him. I've been talking about him since early last year, man.
Rookie year.
Yeah, I may consider that. Amon-Ra, we'll see how you finish, but you may get in Johnny's sexy boy band here. All right, let's get to my last hit it here. My last hit it, really, it could really be a coin flip. I'm talking about Raheem Mostert. I also love Jeff Wilson this week. I chose Mostert because he got more play last week. He seems to be kind of the bruiser and a guy that they're going to play in the red zone near the goal line. I think he's going to get the goal line carries. But they play this week is just absolutely going to be beautiful. I just think he's set up for total success, man. Start Raheem Mostert.
I love it.
Yeah. All right. Who are we quitting, Frankie?
So, John, this is where you mentioned it last week. Stay water, right? Do not be unbiased in your decisions. Guys, a couple weeks ago, I had Dameon Pierce as my hit it. 2 weeks ago, last week, I had him as my flex appeal. This week, I have him as my quit it. And the reason being is because they are playing Dallas. Dallas is nasty, very nasty, right? Their defense is very good. Okay, so I don't trust Dameon Pierce. I don't trust this Houston offense, especially against a defense of this magnitude. Last week against the Browns should have been a smash hit. He did okay. He had 18 carries for 73 yards, 3 receptions on 3 targets. He had 11 fantasy points, guys. Wasn't terrible by any means, but this week is going to be tough sledding. We've seen him prior to this past week, John. He said single digits for a few weeks in a row. I think he's going to go back to that for this week. So, guys, I'm quitting Dameon Pierce versus Dallas this week.
Yeah, you got to quit the whole Dallas or the whole Houston team, man. I mean, there's just this is going to be ugly as hell. I think the line on this game is 17 points.
Yeah, I
think that's what the spread is. You know, I forgot to do last week's quit it's, Frankie, and show how well we did last week. You had Leonard Fournette, he had 11 points, and you had Jeff Wilson, who had less than 1 point. I had Michael Pittman Jr. with less than 3 points, and Gus Edwards with 1 point.
Great work.
Should be listening to us because we're kind of dialed in, man. All right, my first quit it. We talked about it earlier. It's going to be George Kittle, and I know that the tight end landscape is a goddamn nightmare, but I'm telling you, there are guys you can stream. I wouldn't start George Kittle. He's playing Tampa Bay. He's going to be needed to block. He's going to be needed to be in there to block and protect Purdy. And the Tampa Bay defense is tough, and it's very good against tight ends. So I don't think you're going to get anything out of George Kittle. I think you could throw a dart at other tight ends and have a better week. All right, who else you quitting, buddy?
John, I'm going to go out on a limb here. This is risky, guys, but I'm really feeling it. And I'll tell you why. Mike Evans. I'm quitting Mike Evans this week, and I understand how difficult that is. But here's the deal. They're playing San Francisco. Nobody wants to see San Francisco or Dallas defense right now. Nobody. So with Mike Evans playing San Francisco, here's the other issue, John. Since week 9, Mike Evans has not had double-digit fantasy points in half PPR since then. So, guys, it's week 14, right? It's a problem at this point. The other issue is Julio Jones is back healthy and is starting to steal some of that away from Mike Evans. In addition, Chris Godwin is fully healthy, and we are seeing Chris Godwin back. We are seeing him as the go-to guy for Tom Brady in that slot and is dominating, especially from a target share perspective. So not only with Julio healthy, Godwin dominating target share, now you have a top 2 defense with San Francisco. And by the way, last week on Monday night, this past week here, he only had 4 targets against New Orleans without Marshawn Lattimore. And so what we're starting to see is and I don't want to say this, but it's been true for the last 5 weeks. He's boom or bust. Mike Evans right now is boom or bust. So for me, knowing that the playoffs are here, playing a top 2 defense, I am not willing to risk it this week. So Mike Evans, I'm quitting you for week 14.
I'm going to quit Isaiah Pacheco, the running back for the Kansas City Chiefs. And he's had a couple of good games together here in a row. But the reason I'm quitting them, they're playing at Denver. Terrible matchup. Denver has a very, very good rushing defense. I think it's just going to be game scripted out. It's not because I don't think he's a good player or he's not going to get opportunity. I just don't think, I think it's going to be game scripted out with a tough run defense. I think this is going to be a Jerick McKinnon game out of the backfield, giving Patrick Mahomes some options and some dump offs. So I don't expect very much at all from Isaiah Pacheco. Now, next week, he plays Houston. You fire that son of a bitch up. He's probably going to be my hit it next week. So that's just how things work. It's based off of matchups. At Denver, don't love the guy who runs between the tackles. Take the guy who's going to be catching the ball out of the backfield. All right, man, let's do some flex appeal. You know, you keep that dancing up, you might be in my boy band,
I might
baby.
be that lead singer.
All right, so last week's flex appeal, let's see how we did here. We did pretty damn good, Frankie. We really did. Everybody was in double digits. You had Jamal Williams with 10 points and Damian Pierce with 11 points. I had Garrett Wilson, boom, with 21 points out of the rookie. We talked about these damn rookies, man, and they're doing exactly what we said they were going to do. And I had Josh Palmer, which was definitely going out on a limb. But he got you 10 points. So hopefully you started those guys in your flex. They would have given you much success. Frankie, who's your first flex appeal guy this week?
John, I'm going risky, man. I'm just risky this week, man. I'm going Cam Akers. Guys, Cam Akers has been the strangest fantasy season for him I think I've ever seen out of a running back before.
Yeah.
Cam Akers is playing the Las Vegas Raiders. This past week, he had 17 carries, 60 yards, and 2 touchdowns. What this is telling me is they're all in. They're all in on Cam Akers. He's the only guy doing anything on that team worth of substance at this point in time, which is crazy to even say that out loud. But what they're doing is they're playing against a Las Vegas team that is awful against the run. They are averaging 89 yards to opposing running backs. This is the defense of Vegas Raiders. And so I think Cam Akers could replicate to a certain degree what he did this past week against the Raiders. So I'm locking in Cam Akers as my flex appeal of this week.
All right, I'm starting Devontae Smith in the flex this week. He's playing the New York Giants. He's had at least 8 targets in 5 of the last 6 games. So he's kind of been a boomer bust guy, but the targets have consistently been there. And the way that Jalen Hurts is playing right now, he's been able to support 2 receivers. Both of them had over 100 yards and a touchdown last week. I think that does continue. You can't keep both of these guys down. One of them's going to hit. I think Devontae Smith is set up for a nice game this week. Start him with confidence in your flex.
Love it, man. My second, John, and this is a smash play. Guys, I almost put this as my hit it. If I had a third hit it, this would be it. Tony Pollard versus Houston. Smash play. He only had 12 rushes last week against that of the Colts, and he had 91 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he also had 2 receptions on 15 yards. Guys, 24 points from Tony Pollard. Again, walking into a matchup like this of Houston, game script is a dream. This is just beautiful. I can't talk about it enough. Here's the interesting thing about Tony Pollard as well. Outside of a dream matchup, guys, he's the number 9 running back in fantasy football right now in half PPR. The number 9 running back. He's not even the starter on his team. Think about that. It's insane. It's incredible. Tony Pollard is going to rush for infinite yards. Going to be an awesome game. Guys, lock him in. Tony Pollard.
I agree. I love both running backs for Dallas against Houston. I love both running backs for Miami against the Chargers. I mean, there's just some really good running back play this week. Definitely. All right, my last flex appeal guy here is Jerick McKinnon. I talked about sitting Isaiah Pacheco, and I think you should start Jerick McKinnon. It's very simple. I think it's just going to be a game script thing with Denver. I think Patrick Mahomes is going to be in a passing down much more. I think they're going to throw a lot. And I think Jerick McKinnon is going to be that guy in the backfield that's going to be involved in the passing game. So I can see Jerick McKinnon definitely scoring this week. Put him in your flex, man. All right, Frankie, let's get to some playoff schedules here. It's almost playoff time, man. So now we talked about it last week to get ahead. This week, again, we've got to get ahead. QB streaming, defensive streaming. These are some guys that you're going to want to look at. that have really juicy schedules for your playoffs. Again, get rid of your bench, fuck the depth, and build for the next couple of weeks and plan things out, man. All right, let's get to some QB favorable schedules here, Frankie. Any of these guys that that really jump out to you that you're looking at that have a couple of good weeks here in a row?
Yeah, John, the first one that's really jumping out is the Jets, and it's Mike White for the Jets. Now, assuming Mike White continues to be the starter there and they don't go back to Wilson, I love his playoff matchup. And I would actually say if it was Zach Wilson, I probably wouldn't like it as much just because of his play, and it's been very poor. Mike White, though, has back-to-back 300-yard games, and he's getting others involved like that of Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, Corey Davis, etc. So Mike White, guys, and the Jets, they're, again, fantasy football playoff schedule here. It is Detroit, then Jacksonville, and then Seattle for the Super Bowl. And so that's juicy, man. That's a lot of good shit there. There's a lot of good matchups. It's a lot of good opposite high-powered offenses, which is going to create a positive game script for that of the Jets. I love everything about that playoff, the playoff matchups there, John, with the Jets, especially for Mike White.
Yeah, and that, especially if you're talking DFS too, the Mike White, Garrett Wilson stack.
Great.
It's beautiful. If you've got Derek Wilson or Garrett Wilson and Mike White is out on your waiver wire, pick them up. To have that stack rolling into Detroit and Jacksonville especially, it's goddamn beautiful. All right, let's talk about a guy that we talked about a lot here. The 49ers have a really nice schedule to finish the season here. Brock Purdy could be very interesting, man. They have Seattle in week 15, Washington in week 16, and in the Super Bowl, they have the Raiders, man. That is, we talked about the little drip dick in the last episode about the Raiders defense.
Yeah.
Purdy could be interesting. I mean, he really could. I don't see him going crazy and giving you a 30-point week, but I think he can really help you out. If you're in the playoffs, you've got a solid team. If you can have a nice baseline floor for Brock Purdy, he's got the matchups that show that he can do it. You might want to look at picking him up for that Vegas matchup if you make it to the Super Bowl. That's really what I'm eyeing there. But if you need him against Seattle or Washington, you absolutely could play him. Who else you like on this list, Frankie?
John, I really like Kenny Pickett and the Steelers. And it's crazy, right? Because the Steelers, I mean, they just couldn't get anything going for the longevity of the season. And all of a sudden, here we go. Steelers are finding their mojo. The defense is coming back. And you know, looking at Kenny Pickett, John, he hasn't been that incredible for the last few weeks. I'm looking at starting from week 10 here, guys. And for those listening and watching, Kenny Pickett had 13 points. He had 16 points. He had 9.1, and then he had 16 points again against Atlanta. So what this is telling me is it's a decent floor for if you need a streaming option or anything along those lines. But, you know, he played against some tough teams there. I mean, we're talking about New Orleans, the Cincinnati, the Colts, and then Atlanta. Well, listen to this schedule. You have Carolina, then you have the Vegas Raiders, and then Baltimore, who's been getting torched by opposing quarterbacks. So this could be really interesting, knowing that the Steelers are not out of the playoffs. They're actually right in the middle of the playoff hunt. They need to win. They're playing against a Carolina team that is just abysmal at this point. And then you go into Vegas, which could be in a potential real playoff showdown in the NFL or playoff hopeful showdown. And then you got Baltimore in the fantasy Super Bowl. So I love that as well. Now, I don't think his ceiling, John, is as high as that of Mike White and even Brock Purdy, in my opinion. But I do like the floor. And that's what's interesting. I don't see him getting less. I know I listed off 9. I don't see him getting less than that of, 10 points kind of in that Carolina, Vegas, and Baltimore stretch.
Love it, man. We talked about Tyler Huntley. Let's talk about the Ravens. Yeah. Unfortunately, with Lamar going down, Lamar had a very nice schedule to finish here for your fantasy playoffs. But now Tyler Huntley, at least for next week, will be in, but likely for a week or two, it's going to be looking like here. But spend that money on Tyler Huntley because he's got Cleveland, Atlanta, and Pittsburgh. At least for that Cleveland and Atlanta game, I love that schedule, especially with a running quarterback. Torches both of those teams. Cleveland's been terrible against running quarterbacks. Atlanta, I mean, they're just like in that video we talked about. It's Obama's immigration policy. They just let everybody through. Yep. So Tyler Huntley's absolutely set up for a lot of success here, especially in that Week 16 matchup against Atlanta. Who else you thinking here, bud?
So, John, I'm looking at two others here, and I know we have four others, guys. So we have the Falcons, which are interesting to me, and I actually like the Browns, and so I want to package those two together for a second. So the Falcons, obviously, you're looking at Mariota, and here's the deal, guys. They're playing New Orleans week 15, Baltimore week 16, and Arizona week 17 for the Super Bowl. And so Nola's going to be tough. Nola's not a pushover type of schedule. But I like Mariota because of his ability to run. I think that the rushing yards that he will be able to get, maybe it's 40, 50, 60, that's only going to help to the floor. Baltimore, I love that matchup. Again, these are both games to where the game script could be positive in the sense that they need to score. Mariota needs to lead the drives. So I really like those. Those are interesting for sure, especially for streaming options. And then when looking at
real
the
quick
Browns,
before you move on, if you want to get super cute and you're planning a couple of different quarterbacks here, to put Marcus Mariota in your quarterback slot for your Super Bowl, you've got balls of goddamn steel, man, but they're playing Arizona.
Yep.
And that could be a really good matchup. This could be a stream that makes you look like a damn genius in your Super Bowl.
Could be. Totally could be, John. Yeah. And then when looking at the Browns, John, I actually love this. I love their schedule. With the way the Browns are constructed, I think Deshaun Watson, if he gets his shit together and he starts getting a little bit more loosened up, he's got Baltimore for week 15, New Orleans week 16, and Washington week 17. Guys, that is very, very, very positive for that of Deshaun Watson. Again, if he's able to get his rushing floor up, he had 21 yards rushing in his first game back. And if he's able to connect with Amari Cooper on 9 targets, guys, he only completed 4 of those. We're going to start seeing a spike in Deshaun Watson. And again, when these games matter, when Baltimore's putting up points, when Nola's defense is cracking down, things like that, Deshaun's going to need to score. They're going to try to shut down Nick Chubb. So that's why, for me, I think Deshaun is very interesting heading down the stretch. It's risky, but if he can get his shit together, very, very, very favorable matchup.
Yeah. Yeah, another guy I want to throw out here specifically for 2 matchups, Mac Jones. It hasn't been lighting the world on fire. It has a very limited ceiling for sure. Plays Vegas in week 15, plays Miami in your Super Bowl. So you could look at streaming Mac Jones for those 2 weeks. Also, Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers specifically, I'm looking at the last 2 weeks, week 16 against Miami and week 17 in your Super Bowl with Minnesota. That's a division game. He could be playing for the playoffs at that point. So that could be a very good matchup. They've got a leaky defense as well. So Aaron Rodgers could work out for you. All right, man, let's get to defenses here. And we've got very specific weeks. We don't need to talk about all the weeks, but we're looking at a defense for a specific week here that can help you grab a couple of these defenses, plan the next 3 weeks out on your defenses for your bench. Frankie, who do you like on here?
John, my number 1 is the Cowboys. Guys, that is absolutely no question about it. Number 1. And the reason being is because of week 15 and the Super Bowl. Guys, week 15, the Dallas Cowboys played Jacksonville. I could see it being Saxonville at that point with Micah Parsons. And then if you are able to make it to the Super Bowl, guys, Tennessee is who we're looking at. They are prone to stopping the run for the Cowboys. Micah Parsons, Leighton Vander Esch, right? They got that number down. They look good stopping the run. So they stopped Derrick Henry. Good luck, Ryan Tannehill throwing to Trevion Diggs. It's just a nightmare matchup. So for me, I love that heading in to the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, we've got teams like the Cowboys, the Patriots, the Bills, the Eagles. Those defenses are owned. And if you've got those, they've got some juicy matchups here. Those are going to be owned. Let's look at some now that you might be able to pick up off of waivers, make some moves specifically for specific weeks. Look at the Jets. All right. The Jets have 1 week in particular that I really like. Week 15 against Jacksonville. I think that is a team or a defense that you can stream. They've got Detroit, Jacksonville, Seattle. Detroit 16, scores.
John,
week 16, I'm sorry, with the Jets. Week 16 against Jacksonville. I think you can stream them there. Who else you see here?
John, I'm leaning towards one that's kind of sketchy. And what I'm saying is the Vikings. Their defense has been very, very, very poor like the last few weeks. But the interesting thing is week 15, they play Indy. And week 16, they play the Giants. The Giants is a little bit nerve-wracking, right? Because that could be a game where Saquon goes absolutely buck fucking wild. Or could be a game where they have quite a few sacks from Danielle Hunter and get to Daniel Jones. But I love the Indianapolis week 15. Guys, that should be a smash defensive play. Indy couldn't look worse, and I just think that that's a very, very interesting stream.
Yep. Now, this next one I've picked up already in a couple of my leagues, specifically for their week 15 matchup. Week 16 matchup. The Titans play the Houston Texans. We've seen what's happening there. It's an absolute shit show. I'm starting the Titans in all of my leagues, week 16 against the Houston Texans. What about Ravens have a nice one on here too, Frankie? What do you think about that?
Ravens is interesting, guys. So the Ravens in week 15 here, they have Cleveland, week 16 Atlanta, and week 17 Pittsburgh. So absolutely, the only thing that makes me nervous, John, with the Ravens, and it actually is because of Lamar, is that they're going to have to really rely on their defense. And if they get behind, John, it's going to be really, really tough. And so it's going to be interesting, man. This could be the Ravens defense could be make or break for you all. If you have balls and nuts of steel, it could be something that you want to try to test out. If you're on if there's not enough defenses on the waivers or anything along those lines, and you see them kind of lingering, pick them up, because what we might see is the Ravens come out and play smash mouth football, especially in that Atlanta matchup. I love that week 16 matchup. Could be very interesting.
Yeah. Final option here, looking at the Washington Commanders in week 15, they do play the Giants with that. Obviously, that's a divisional game. They tied. They tied, and then they play each other again in 2 weeks here.
It's crazy.
I think that's a good one. I think the Washington Commanders defense has really stepped up and has played well. So I'm not looking at points against. I'm looking at opportunity for sacks, fumbles, interceptions. Sure. I think that week 15 matchup against the Giants is a decent one. All right, man. Let's cross some streams, babe.
We'll cross the streams.
Excuse me, Egon. You said crossing the streams was bad.
Cross the streams.
All right, Frankie. Who are we streaming this week? Last week, God, you did nail it, man. You had Jared Goff as your streaming quarterback, 25 points. Tight end. Hey, man. If you could start predicting. If you could start predicting fucking tight ends in fantasy football, I mean, I'll buy some Bitcoin off you. How's that sound? Because
there you go.
Yeah, Foster Moreau, 4 points. Your defense, Browns defense.
Called it.
Look at that. Called it, 35 points. I love that, man. All right, so who are we looking at this week for streaming options?
So, guys, I never do this. I never do back-to-back seas. I'm doing back-to-back seas again. Jared Goff. Guys, he's the number 14 quarterback right now in fantasy football. He has been absolutely dominant the last few weeks. And what we're starting to find is with the emergence back of DeAndre Swift, Amon-Ra St. Brown, they're getting healthier with Josh Reynolds coming back and starting to play again. Guys, this team is actually scary. This Lions team is no bullshit with their offense. And so with them playing Minnesota, it's a high profile type of game. They're at home in a division game. Guys, I love this matchup. Stream Jared Goff this week.
Stay in the flames, baby.
Stay in the flames. John, for tight end this week, I'm also going to take a bit of a risk here. I'm going to go Daniel Bellinger versus that of Philly. The reason why I'm doing this, so he's the tight end for the Giants, guys. He was hurt and out for a few weeks, came back and had a pretty good game last week. This week, I see Philly just dominating the Giants. But here's the thing. Daniel Jones is going to need an outlet. You can't rely on Saquon Barkley and Darius Slayton every single time to break loose a big yard or big yardage. So what I think is going to happen is I could see a couple checkdowns. Last week he had 5 receptions on 5 targets, had, again, 7 points in fantasy football, guys. I could see this week being fairly similar against that of Philly. Again, with that stout Philly defense, somebody's going to need to get the ball, and it could be Daniel Bellinger. And the last, guys, from a defensive side, it pains me to say this as a diehard Browns fan, but it makes sense. I'm going to go Steelers defense versus that of Baltimore. Lamar Jackson's out. Guys, with Lamar Jackson being hurt, Gus Edwards still isn't looking right. Kenyon Drake's been irrelevant. Demarcus Robinson has been the only thing of relevance from the receiver room, maybe Duvernay earlier on in the season. What I'm getting at is this Steelers defense is peaking at the right time. TJ Watt is scary as hell on that outside. Cameron Hayward is playing out of his mind. and they're really coming together as a cohesive unit. I love this matchup. It is a must-win for Steelers, and I think they upset the Baltimore Ravens this week, and I think it's because of their defense.
TJ Watt, having him in that defense makes it fantasy relevant again because of what he does and how he disrupts the sacks, the QB hits, the fumbles,
the interceptions.
He's crazy. He does it all. So yeah, he has made that defense single-handedly. He's made that defense a streaming defense. Good calls, Frankie. We'll see how we do next week. Thank you, everyone, for listening and for watching. We really appreciate everything. Don't forget, please follow us on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Frankly Fantasy Football, and on Twitter at Frankly Fantasy F. Some huge shout outs this week to Anthony Sestone. Plume. Frankie rocking the Plume t-shirt. Thank you, brother, for the music you've given us for our podcast. Liam Hickey for helping us produce. Jesse Kelsey for socials. Our sponsor, which let me take some time and talk about our sponsor for a second, man. You got a minute?
Oh, yeah.
This episode was brought to you by CalSpra Employee Recruitment Services. Tired of staffing companies charging high hourly rates to recruit subpar employees for your business? CalSpra Recruitment Services sets you up with a program that sustains a constant flow of new recruits coming to your door. How do they do it? It's simple. They had to. CalSpra has owned a manufacturing business since 1989, and when the employee crisis hit, they came up with a system with proven results. No hourly fees for employees they bring to your business, just one flat fee to get you real results. For more information, call now at 330-584-7759. Use the promo phrase Frankie and Johnny to get a free consultation to your business. Thank you so much to our sponsor, CalSpra Employee Recruitment Services. Frankie, good luck to you next week. Let's hope we can get in the playoffs together. Let's hope it matches up properly with our brackets that we can have a Frankie and Johnny Super Bowl this year, man. Wouldn't that be great? Good luck to all of you in week 14, the end of the regular season. We'll talk to you all next week as we plan for our playoffs. May the fantasy gods smile upon you.